So this is my 2015 KTM 300. It's a XCW 300. The factory manual says to do a top end at 100 hours. I've had mine now for about 103. Let's see here, 102.9. So I figured it was time to change it, as the book said. And so I just want to show everybody what the condition typically is when you pull these apart at 100 hours. I was kind of questioning whether it was too soon or too late. And if anything, it's too late. I don't race, but I do ride it very hard. I'm sure if you're racing, you need to do it a lot more frequently than the 100 hours that KTM says. So if you look down there, I got the top end off. To get it all disassembled and apart, it only took about 20 minutes to get the bike to this point. So if you're mechanically inclined at all, it's not a bad top end to do. KTM's done the power valves really nice, easy to unhook. But this is the crux of my video. This is what I wanted to show you. I rebuild a lot of bikes and motorcycles, and there was a review on Rocky Mountain ATV, great store. But there was a review, they didn't have the Wiseco piston. I almost exclusively do Wiseco top ends when I do my rebuilds. They make really, really good stuff. They have a cheaper brand, but I do their forged piston top end kits. I'd rather pay a little bit of money and have good parts in there. But there was a review on Rocky Mountain that said some dude was trying to say that the Vertex pistons that they sell were basically a KTM piston. And I got it and I went to go put it in the bike, and that's not even close to the case. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad piston, but quality wise and build wise, it's probably half what the original KTM is. It was really, you can tell it was very cheaply done. So on this bike, I went back to my Wiseco. I didn't venture away from what I typically do, and I want to show you and compare the KTM, which is on the right, 100 hours, and a brand new Wiseco that I'm putting in with all their gaskets. They do a really good job on the gaskets too. So if you're getting one of their pistons, you might as well just do a top end. But I'm just going to do a quick comparison of the two so you can see and you can make the choice for yourself. But if you're not putting in KTM factory, this forged piston from Wiseco is probably the closest thing you're going to get. And then, so let's just go through it. I'm going to weigh them and I'm going to measure them just so you can see the difference. This is your Wiseco, and don't be fooled. The KTM one looked like this too when it was new. They have this anti-friction coating on all these, on all their high-end cylinders, and eventually it wears off and it'll end up looking like this. So this has 100 pretty good hours on it. But this is a stock KTM and this is a Wiseco. If you look at the two, you can see a little bit of difference in how how they're built and machined. This is cast in, where this forged piston, they machined a hole in there. If you look underneath, you can see a lot of difference. You can see a lot of casting marks on the KTM one, but on the Wiseco one, it's nice and clean. But let's look at the weights. The skirts all dimensionally, they're identical. When I started measuring the rings, where the rings sit, the top end, I mean, they're really, really close to the same part. You can see how much this is worn. This is worn a little too much. It's not so much the piston I'm worried about, but if you don't do the pistons quick enough and they start to wobble in the cylinder, because they get a little bit smaller diameter, you end up taking out the cylinder. So here's the cylinder, and I don't know if you can see it very good. I'm going to try and show you what you don't want in your cylinder. To get you, if I can get it a little bit better light here, it's going to be kind of tough, but you can see where the cylinder's been wearing. I apologize, I just can't get the right lighting down in the cylinder. If it was me on this next go round, I will do my top end at about 80 hours. There's a good picture. You can see the wear patterns in the cylinder. You can see how right here and right here, it's really polished up where it's been wearing. And And that's what you kind of want to avoid. As long as the pistons have this coating on there, it minimizes the wear in your cylinder, which is what you want, because the cylinder is expensive. You want to just be replacing pistons as much as possible. The cylinder's still in really good shape, but like I said, I probably should have done this at 80 hours instead of 100. But let's take a look at the pistons, weight-wise and dimensionally. I got a nice little male scale here. So this is your KTM, stock KTM. So 250 grams. This is a brand new one from Wiseco, 268. I would expect it to be a little bit heavier because the relief isn't as big as what they put on the KTMs up at the top. If we look at measuring the top, I'll spare you because they're all the same spec when you start measuring them. So it's got a 72 millimeter bore, and there's the top of your piston, 71.48. But what I wanted to measure and show you was the thickness in the skirts. So if you look at the skirt down here on the intake side, you're about 1.43 millimeters. And on the KTM, 1.46. On the exhaust side, you got 3.53 on the KTM. And you have, it's a little bit thinner, 2.6 on the Wiseco. So even though it's heavier, they got the weight in a different spot. The skirts on that one are a little thicker. But all in all, they're both look like really, really well-built cylinders compared to some of the cheaper brands that I've bought and purchased just to see. But yeah, so that's my review of the Wiseco. I really like their stuff. Like I say, I put it in all my bikes and quads if they have it available, and get their top end kits. They do a really, really good job. I'll put this back in there, and I'm sure I'll have brand new performance in the bike. If you have any questions or anything else, just feel free to put a comment in there and I'll try and respond. One thing I did want to show you, a couple more things about the kit. So this is your stock wrist pin, and you can see that it's the same thickness all the way through, and it's built really heavy. On the Wiseco, it's actually a tapered pin, so it's thicker in the middle where the load is, but out towards the ends it tapers down to save on the weight. Weight wise, here's your Wiseco, 51 grams, and here's your stock one at 52. So they're comparable, but once again, it looks like Wiseco put the weight where it needs to be, you know, in the middle where all the high load is. And this was what really surprised me, is on the bearings. If you look at this stock bearing, which by the way was close to done, it's another reason why I would recommend doing them a little bit sooner than 100 hours, is getting pretty worn and sloppy in there. If you look at it smooth, there's really only two really microscopic paths for the lubrication to get around. If you look at the one from Wiseco, it looks like it's got a whole bunch of more channeling to try and hold the oil and keep it on the rollers. So rather than just a smooth cage, it's got some profile to it, which is going to help hold in that oil for sure. So I think the lubrication will stay in the bearing a lot better on this, let's call it an aftermarket Wiseco bearing, than the stock. The stock's on top, the Wiseco's underneath. You look at the bearing surface, the bearings are a little bit shorter. So the loading is going to be a little bit different, but it still shouldn't matter. I mean, the bearings are a little bit bigger diameter versus the stock, a little bit shorter. So I don't know, we'll see how they hold up. I'm sure it'll be fine. I've never had any problems with any of them, but I thought it was interesting how they did the bearing cage. And it looks like, to me, just by my experience, they did that to try and trap and hold some of the oil on the bearing. But yeah, so that's my review. If you have any questions, just give me a shout and I'll try and answer them. Thanks for watching. Give me a like if you like it.